Chris Voss is one of the FBI's former lead hostage negotiators. He has negotiated with terrorists like ISIS. He has stopped live hostage situations. He has also negotiated across some of the biggest boardrooms in billion-dollar companies all around the world. If you haven't read his book, Never Split the Difference, you should absolutely read his book. It's one of my favorite books when it comes to negotiating. And every time I speak to Chris, my mind gets blown wide open with new ways to make more money and get people to do the things that I want them to do. This podcast has all of that. He has stories in here I've actually never heard him share before anywhere. And he has things that you can take today to make you more and also to make you maybe even a better human in how you communicate with those you love and those you don't like very much. Without further ado, my friend Chris Voss. What I wanted to talk about to you today is, like, we've been talking a lot lately, and you've been everywhere. Prague, Helsinki, all across the world. And I was wondering, what are you talking about now? Like, what are you obsessing on?
Well, more ways to help people understand why this works. And then a talk I just gave in Riyadh, which, by the way, Saudi these days is fascinating, fascinating. I think they told me 60% of the country is 35 and under. Like youngsters that want to get at it, that care less about the past and more about the future, which is what that age group's about. Like, we don't care how you guys did in the past. We want to see what's the best way to do it going forward. So what I talk to them a lot, particularly in the Middle East, like, why are we all the same and yet simultaneously all different? Which was, at one point in time, I thought it was an academic distinction that just made academics happy to talk about, the difference between feelings and emotions. The first time somebody brought that up, I thought, I don't care what the difference is. I'm a layman. I make stuff work, and we're going to use the black swan skills, whether or not there's a distinction between feelings and emotions. I don't care. And so a friend of mine, Eric Barker, wrote a book called Barking Up the Wrong Tree, and a blog by the same name, and he's written that different cultures have terms for feelings that other cultures don't have. Like in this island of South Pacific, they don't even have a term for this feeling or emotion. So how do you explain that? And then the consistent multicultural experts who say, yeah, you got to understand Arabs, you got to understand Germans, the difference between Germans, Italians, Arabs, all this. And my response to that is like, look, dude, you're just keeping yourself employed over nonsense. So what's the answer? Or the hypothesis, which I haven't seen it prove, how you prove it, but I'm not seeing anybody disagree, that you're born with 5 basic emotions. It's original equipment. You come to planet Earth with 5 core emotions. And I think they're anger, sadness, disgust, happiness, and I can't remember what the other 1 or 2 are. And the only argument I'm seeing is whether there's 5 or there's 7. And is it happiness or joy? But I'm not seeing anybody contend with that. So part 1, that's why we're all the same. Because you're human, period. You're born with these emotions. Now, me being an observer of navigating them, my first observation is 4 out of the 5 are negative. Only 1 is positive. And the Black Swan approach is, let's deactivate the negatives, and then the positives will take off on their own, which is the case. That's why we got the skill of the accusations audit, listing the negatives, and then why, if you're not angry yet, I might say to you, this is going to make you angry. And it doesn't plant anger, it inoculates you from it. So, we got a strategic advantage as soon as you understand this. But then, as you go through life, your emotions interact with your experience, creating feelings, which then begins to explain, there's a detachment disorder syndrome of people that aren't held enough in the first year of their life. Most commonly shows up with orphans, because they're in an orphanage, prior to probably this century. They didn't know they need to hold them. They didn't understand detachment syndrome, and a lot of people that were adopted in the past, they get to their mid-teens, their parents adopted them at age 2, 3 maybe, showed them nothing but love. But in the mid-teens, they're lying. They have an detachment syndrome. Like, where did this come from? First year of life.
I heard that too with preemie babies. Like, they originally said you can't touch the preemie babies because bacteria, and they have compromised immune system.
Right.
And then they tried to study, I think it was here in New York, where they allowed for touch, like for an hour a day, just holding them. And the preemie babies grew faster and survived more just from human touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is wild.
Yes, yes. So, but that's you interacting with the world. The explanation for sociopaths the bureaus always try to figure that out when we're how does one become a serial killer? What happened? And one of the hypotheses is when they were 5, 6, 7 years old, they did something, made a mistake, parents punished the hell out of them. 3 months later, they made the same mistake, parents didn't do anything. What's that teach a child? There are no rules. So, but then that's, again, you interacting with the world. So, yes, we're all the same and we're all different, but if I understand the fundamental rules of how to navigate emotions, no matter where you grew up, no matter what your ethnicity, your culture, your diet, your religion, I know that you've got these 5 core emotions. And so empathy, tactical empathy, works with Arabs, works with Persians, works with Latinos, because you're a human being. So in pointing that out these days and when I'm talking about it, makes it easier when I'm in Riyadh and it's an international audience. And they go like, well, you're an American. It's an American book. This is an American methodology. And I'm like, no, it's not. As a matter of fact, it's human. And so that's why I'm talking to people about this a lot.
What exactly is tactical empathy, and why does it matter?
It's effectively proactive listening based on patterns of behavior that are predicted by things like your 5 core emotions and neuroscience. Now, originally, empathy was originally designed to not be sympathy. It's been contorted, convoluted into usage. These days, people say if you have empathy, that means you sympathize, you have compassion. Empathy is just observing the other person's emotions, and where it's you getting out of the way. Empathy from an Israeli to a Palestinian is for the Israeli to say, you hate us because you think we're a colonizing power that's bent on your extermination. That's not agreement. That's observing the other side's point of view. Palestinian to an Israeli. The world persecuted you. You feel that this is your homeland, which is taken away from you 2,000 years ago. Ultimately, there was a global effort to exterminate you, perpetrated by the Nazis in the 1930s. Most of the world stood back and watched. And then finally, you had, after all these years, you finally have a homeland, and this is the only place you feel safe. There was no agreement from either side on that. That's empathy. That's stating the other side's perspective, and that's the true application of empathy. We called it tactical empathy originally because it's a little why you tell a SEAL guy, no, we're not teaching you yoga breathing. We're teaching you tactical breathing.
That's so good.
And then the guy go like, oh, okay, I'll do tactical breathing. I'm not doing yoga, but I'll do tactical.
That's right.
So we're trying to make the term more usable.
I like that. It's interesting because I was actually talking to Chris, my husband, about this the other day, that I remember when I was a journalist, and at the time I was talking to cartel members. And these were young cartel members, so, they were really human. They were like young guys at a club. You could find them often by their tattoos and some of the outfits that they would wear in northern Mexico. And these are people that have done categorically awful things, right? Rape, murder, violence, law breaking. And I remember at the time talking to them and saying to a girlfriend afterwards, because we were writing a story, like, it's fascinating because I can understand why they are the way that they are based on the conversations that I have with them. And her response was, why the fuck would you talk to somebody like that? That's like talking to a white supremacist. Like, why would you even want to understand where they came from? And I thought that was really interesting. Like, how do you talk to somebody that you physically, like, viscerally disagree with, and should you?
Yeah, yes, you can, and yes, you should. And you don't equate understanding with agreement. And most people have trouble drawing that distinction. And that was actually as an FBI hostage negotiator, that's the first time they'd teach us. Because how the hell am I going to agree with the guy on the other side? I'm Al-Qaeda on the other side, ISIS on the other side. How am I going to agree with them? I'm not. However, on behalf of the American people, you guys are putting me in there to have an influence on his behavior. And so if I'm going to get in my way, then you should fire me. And I actually learned that previous to that on the hotline, suicide hotline. Mm-hmm. If, you don't believe in suicide at all. I don't, for religious reasons and spiritual reasons. So then what are you going to do? Get on the phone with somebody who's suicidal and be judgmental, tell them they're doing the wrong thing? It's not going to help. That doesn't help anybody. It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So when you can decouple those, then actually you give yourself the ability to influence people in a way nobody else can. And I was kicking this around just the other night with Derek Gaunt, head of my training. We teach curiosity as the ultimate attribute for you to make you smart and more resilient, or even anti-fragile, as Nassim Nicholas Taleb would say. Mm-hmm. So curiosity could be a very self-centered thing to do. Simultaneously, I can open anybody up, like anybody, with my curiosity, because curiosity is impossible to resist. And so you can talk to a member of the cartel and they will not be able to resist your curiosity, because you're not judging, since you're not agreeing, then you've got no problem internally. You're not violating any of your core values to talk to them, because you're not agreeing with them. But they will open up to you in ways they will not open up to anybody else, which gives you a superpower.
That's so interesting. So today, we yell at each other on the internet. We have massive judgment for each other. We think it's wrong often to associate, date, or engage with somebody who has different views than us.
Right. Right.
And what we're actually doing is maybe killing our own superpower with that.
Well said. That's right.
Interesting. So if you wanted to influence somebody, what is the way to do it? Is the way to do it curiosity?
Yeah, and then they'll feel it.
Yeah.
And everything that they say, they'll be encouraged, because they want to tell you. Like, there isn't anybody out there that doesn't want to open up to you. They still want to be judged. And as soon as you're delighted, because curiosity is highly positive. I'm in a conversation, how we got into this with Derek, I'm in a conversation 3 nights ago with a woman. We're describing another conversation. I interviewed somebody for a marketing position on my team. And shortly I found out that they had a formative moment in their life was during a seance on a Ouija board in his ex-girlfriend's haunted house that she grew up in.
Okay.
And because I find that stuff out about people. I find a thread, I start digging in, I'm going to find out about you. And so this woman is listening to the conversation. She says, how do you get from an interview for a marketing job to a Ouija board in a haunted house? I'm like, it's, I don't know, it's just me doing my thing. She said, I don't see how you got there at all. So I turn the conversation on her to draw her out, and she's being very guarded because she knows I'm getting ready to come at her with the skills. And she's like, you can't do this on me. And so we started out asking her about her background, where she grew up, and her dad, and she's like, I don't remember anything I don't know anything about that. I don't know how he got there, I don't know, and this and that. 15 minutes later, I'm getting a detailed history of this guy, her father, and it's utterly fascinating. It enlightened me about Cuba. It enlightened me about the relationship between Spain and Cuba. I found out that Castro's parents were Cuban. Now, he was born his parents were Spaniards.
Yeah.
Now, he was born in Cuba, but your first set of values from age 0 to 5 is what you grew up with in the house. So even though he's Cuban, he started the world with Spanish values because his parents were emigrated from Spain.
Oh, shit, those are my people. That's not good.
Which then puts a whole nother spin on the history. Now, I'm fascinated by this. I'm curious.
Yeah.
This is exactly the same thing that she told me 15 minutes earlier she didn't know.
Interesting.
Because she's blocking me. She wants to know, am I using a technique on her? And is it safe to open up? Mm-hmm. And am I going to criticize? Mm-hmm. But I'm fascinated. I'm curious, which then comes out in how I respond. She says something sort of innocuously about some member of her family. And I'm like, yeah, really? Like, how does that work? Because I know this and I know that. And how does it play in? I'm intensely curious. She opens up. And not only that, at the end of the conversation, she wants to have another one. Having been opened up against her will, she found the experience great, which means she doesn't resent it, which means she'll talk to me in the future, which means I can ask deeply core value-related questions in the future. If we're ever working on something together and we have an issue, she's going to trust me. Mm. This is the beginning of a great working relationship, great personal, whatever you want. Mm-hmm. And that's what curiosity does. You can open anybody on earth up with curiosity.
Do you think, I mean, young people, especially today, you know, there's lots of studies that show that we have less face-to-face communication than ever before, lots of async communication. We don't really like to pick up the phone. You know, we like to do a lot of text communication. Do you think young people are worse at communicating than prior generations?
Without question. Communication, emotional intelligence is an unlimited skill and a perishable skill. Hmm. So if you haven't built it, you haven't built it. You know, it's like going to the gym. Yeah. You're not going to be in shape unless you go to the gym. You stop going to the gym, you start sliding back. Now, that doesn't mean they can't do it. And so the interesting thing we found about that is the 1%ers, the top performers, in my view, no matter what the generation, they're all the same. Whether they're in 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So they do have an innate curiosity and a desire for innovation. And a desire, first, to beat the competition. But then the real revelation is, how do I be the best I could be? Mm-hmm. That's the other thing I'm talking to people a lot about now, because you may be best in class, but for you, you're only at your C grade level. And you don't know it because you're best in class. Yep. So then how do you get to a level that you don't even know is there? Yeah. And the top performers, as soon as they discover empathy, they're like, wow, this is cool. I can't get enough of this. And I got a 22-year-old, a 28-year-old, a 32-year-old. And when we're doing our live in-person training, they are some of the most interesting, because the world has said, well, you only want to text, so I'll just text you. Or, you know, the educational institutions, kids these days just want to be digital. And so we'll feed them what they want. And they don't know that they've been blocked from this. Mm. So when they discover communication, like, the world has opened up. So they tend to be less skilled in it, but when they discover it, they're more delighted than anybody else is.
Interesting. Yeah, it's almost like we've forgotten what we knew.
Yeah.
So what about, I want to go back to something you said before because it's fascinating. You were negotiating with what we would call terrorists.
Bad guys, as bad as you can imagine.
What is your process for getting interested in them? Do you have to fake it for a point? Do you have to fake non-disgust? How do you have a conversation with somebody that you hate like a terrorist?
No, you don't have to fake it. You don't have to fake curiosity. Like, I didn't realize that at the time. Like, I knew how influential the process was from practice. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand all the moving parts at the time. I just knew the abilities it gave me, which was, if I'm listening, if I say a couple of things, if I understand how they see things and I can feed it back to them, then I'm going to gain traction with them very quickly in a way that they are not prepared for. So they're prepared for arguments. They were never prepared for empathy, ever. Bad guys who rehearse in advance what to expect. Hezbollah in the 80s, when they were kidnapping Westerns all over the place, they were told what the kidnapped victims were going to say. You know, the jailers had bosses, and the jailers would say, you know, they're going to say they're innocent. Here's the predictable dialogue. And so it would wall the jailers off that were holding the hostages. So but then nobody ever prepared for empathy. Al-Qaeda didn't prepare for empathy. ISIS didn't prepare for empathy. It catches them off guard. And I'm delighted that I know it's going to catch you off guard. So as soon as I understood how influential that was, and in very short order, what would catch them off guard, I'm 15, 20 years ago, I'm being brought in to train the hostage negotiation team nationally for the United Arab Emirates. Sheikh that's in charge of counterterrorism at the time, I'm walked in and they say, look, understand ahead of time, if anybody takes hostages here, Sheikh wants to kill him. You know, if you take hostages on Emirati soil, he doesn't care who you are. You have violated our sovereignty, and we are going to deal with you accordingly. And so don't pitch the Sheikh that you're going to save lives across the board. He wants to know how you're going to make his people more operationally effective. His SWAT teams, how are we going to end this as soon as possible? We don't want any Emiratis to get killed, but we're in here to save bad guys. So I sit down with this guy, fascinating dude, American educated, deeply insightful thinker. And he walks in with no entourage, by himself. So we sit down and he looks at me and he says, what are you going to say? What are you going to teach my guys to say? And I said, here's the opening line I want him to say. What you're doing is a great thing. And his mouth drops open. And he said, now I got you because you can't wait to hear what I'm going to say next. And that's exactly the power I want to give you guys. The bad guy's mouth is going to drop open, and he's going to be sitting there waiting to hear the next word. And that's when they have influence. And he says, you're hired.
I would hire you too. That's wild. How did you know? Did you know you were going to say that before you went in there?
When you start thinking about the dynamics and the patterns for the other side, if some terrorist has taken hostages, how do they see it? They're doing a great thing. Yeah. And, you know, with my colleagues, we talked about it. We understand empathy. How does the other side see it? How do I get into your head? I have to say something that's really close to what the voice in your head is saying at the moment, because otherwise the voice in your head is going to distract you. So as soon as I start lining up with the voice in your head, you don't listen to that, you start listening to me. Now I've got influence.
That's so true. Even in fights, like I can think of that same thing in, like, you know, interpersonal relationships. It's like when somebody's telling me something that is not aligned with the voice in my head, I'm ignoring it. I'm not listening to you. That makes all the sense in the world. And so if you start from that standpoint, the most important part of this conversation is really probably your research and preparation on who the human is. Are you doing a lot of preparation ahead of time? Or do these come back to the big five?
Yeah, well, you know, in point of fact, it comes back to the big five. In point of fact, we were taught initially what we called emotion labeling. Just label the emotion you hear. Now, that emotion was always going to be negative. And so then we made the presumption, well, yeah, of course, it's a bad history, bad situation, so you're going to hear negative emotions. And I didn't really realize at the time, you know, the big five, 4 out of 5 are negative. So I've just started to increase my percentage chances because they're human, not because they're bad guys in a bad situation, but because they're human. And then the brain science, what little there is, the neuroscience that backs it up, none of it contradicts it. There just hasn't been that much to support it. It has shown consistently that calling out negatives, not denying them, calling them out, diffuses them. So that's why one of our, you know, I'm teaching a Black Swan method. I sit down in an opening meeting with you in a business setting. I'm probably going to say, right off the bat, at some point in time, you're probably going to wonder why you're here. At some point in time, you're going to ask yourself, is this worth my time? At some point in time, you're probably going to say to yourself, this guy's just greedy. He's only looking out for himself. I'm deactivating your negatives and inoculating from them, too. That's the other thing. Most people don't realize you inoculate. A lot of people fear, speak the devil into existence. Their experience has been from denying negatives. And the thing that nobody ever notices, instead of saying, I don't want you to think I'm being grabbing with both hands here, that's a denial. But if I were to say instead, it's probably going to feel like I'm grabbing with both hands, your reaction is going to be like, well, you got to look out for yourself.
Yeah, that is. Why do I want to say that? Like, why do we want to say that back to you? Because that's my gut reaction.
Yeah. I think there is a fundamental human instinct for fairness, which the exploiters use against us on a regular basis. Like we call fair the F word. And so why is it so powerful on a regular basis when somebody says to you, like, I just want what's fair? The manipulative negotiators learn that using that phrase will probably cause you to compromise your position, because inside you'd be like, I don't want to be unfair. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be unfair. So I think when we call it out in the other way, then you say, yeah, I got to look out for my side, but you have to look out for yourself too. Mm. I know that that's the trigger. Mm. Now, why that's a trigger, my hypothesis is that, we are in fact wired for fairness.
Mm. Yeah, otherwise we wouldn't exist as a society, right? I mean,
right.
if we were all Machiavellian to our roots, dark triad, sociopaths that went after our own interests, we wouldn't be able to have a cooperative society.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to innovate to the level that we have. So at some degree, in order for humanity to continue, we had to err more on the side of, peace, sex, continuation of species, as opposed to violence and destruction. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be here. I mean, New York, how many people are in the city? Tens of millions. And if we were all destructive and self-interested at all times, I don't think the city would work.
It'd be Mad Max, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What about, when I've heard you say before that you don't really lie. Is that true? Has there ever been an investigation or a negotiation where it was life or death, so you had to lie, or you think you should have to lie?
No, I don't think it's ever necessary. I'm very much against it. First of all, liars are really good at spotting lies. And so we'll often invite you to lie to test you. Mm. Number one. So it's number two, even if you're great at lying, it's exhaustive. And if I talk to you long enough, you're going to say something contradictory. Right. And I'm going to figure it out. So even if I'm good at it, you're going to catch me, ultimately. And then the relationship is destroyed. So it's often a test. Mm. And we know of instance after instance where being determined to tell the truth was what made the difference. And everybody appreciates, just don't lie. Just it's really hard. Business these days, deception by omission tends to be accepted. And it's because out of defensiveness. People don't know how to tell the truth. And you get really caught up in short term. And this is another reason why, an example, Egyptian business deal. And I'm picking it out because it's in the Arab world, but they're people. So Egyptian businessman has got a contract with the Egyptian government for a $4 million contract. It's whatever his company's selling him, and $4 million. And, he's going to get big commission, company's going to make a lot of money, but he knows it's not going to work. And finally, he can't take it anymore, and he reaches out to his government contact and says, look, this thing you guys are buying from us, it's going to fail you. They cancel a contract on the spot. Now, because he was such a successful salesman, he doesn't get fired. I'm sure he was worried about losing his job, but he just couldn't compromise his integrity, couldn't live with himself. And his boss, since he was a performer, was kind of like, All right, we're going to live with this. 3 months later, same government point of contact comes back to him, awards him a $12 million no-bid contract. So long-term, it's going to work out for you. And even as I'm riffing on this now, listening to an interview by Jordan Peterson the other day, and he says the truth is the best long-term strategy. So, but we get caught up between short-term success and short-term fears versus long-term. I'm long-term. And when you start looking around for it, the truth is the best long-term strategy. But it feels like it's going to cost you now, and it scares the heck out of you, which is why often people defer to deception by omission, and so many people are kind of forgiving of it. But when I find out that you deceived me by omission, I'm probably not going to be angry with you, but I'll never trust you again.
Yeah, you have it just like in the back of your head a little bit. Yeah, you know, were you always like that? Like, were you like that as a kid, or is that something that you became after being in the bureau?
No, and my father was very high integrity, a hardworking, high integrity, I'm proud to say, very blue collar guy.
Yeah, so he kind of instilled that in you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because it definitely, you know, even if you look at a lot of our politicians today on whichever side, it's almost like, you know, I kind of laugh watching the debate because they're like, well, who lied more, you know? But it's not like who didn't lie.
Right,
it's like,
exactly.
well, who lied more? So we have this natural proclivity, I think, in society to say it's cool. Like, we know they lied, but like not that much.
Right.
And I do think that negates our institutions by and large.
Yeah. Well, we start with what's a white lie, and then how big does that latitude get, and then for what purpose?
Yeah. What are some of the tells about somebody lying to you or not? How can you tell if somebody's lying to you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I don't believe in tells per se. I believe much more in the way a polygraph works. Polygraph tries to figure out what you look like when you're telling the truth. So then when you come out of that profile, then you're lying or you're deceiving. Prosecutor, Southern District of New York, Pat Fitzgerald, brilliant dude, used to always say the truth comes out the same way every time. So I will talk to you not looking for tells, but I'm going to try to draw a bead on what you look like when you're telling the truth. Every now and then somebody wants to play, they interview me, they want to play this 2 truths and a lie game. And so what I do typically is I just start firing questions at you, and then we go through any one of your stories, and then the minute you're out of sync, I'm like, all right, so 2 truths and a lie, which 2 stories came out the same way? Which story came out differently? What did you do differently? All I know is it's different. So what does that mean? That means tells are situational to the person. In very broad terms, you can kind of guess. But another interview that I'm hearing recently, the person who's kind of this body language expert says, all right, so if you got a frown on your face, if you look angry, you could be angry. You could have gas.
True.
If I go, oh, they're angry, and they're not, then you've blown it. You went down the wrong rabbit hole. So tells per se are strictly within context to the person, and I will talk to you long enough until I get an idea what you look like when you're telling the truth. That's what I'm looking for.
Interesting. And so how do you do you think you can beat a polygraph test?
You can't beat a good polygrapher. And it's whether or not the polygrapher is any good. And a really good polygrapher will tell you before they put you on the box whether or not you're lying. And a good polygrapher, either if you tell the truth, you tell the truth one way. Maybe you never tell the truth. And a polygraph will pick that up. And so that's why a good polygrapher will say, we detect deception across the board. So we don't know what they're lying about. We don't know what they're telling the truth about. All we know is they're not into telling the truth. And so you don't beat the polygraph per se. Nobody ever if it comes back inconclusive, which was the good polygraphers in the bureau say it's inconclusive. They're like, okay, good. The guy's hiding something. We just don't know where it is or what it is. And so every now and then somebody will take a polygraph. We asked him 5 questions and he passed the polygraph. No, you got to ask about 30 questions. So I know if they asked 5 questions, then it was a lousy operator, not the machine. And so the operators vary so wildly. That's why it's generally not admissible in court.
That makes all the sense in the world. So it's really expertise as opposed to equipment.
Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that.
I heard about I never met him, but I heard about a guy in a bureau. He'd ask you a question and write down every body movement that you made after he asked a question. Very patient dude. Here's a question: what'd you have for breakfast? What day is it? What city you in? Baseline questions. If you tell the truth, you're going to answer each one of those questions exactly the same way. He's going to get a complete beat on that. Now, where were you last Thursday? For the first time, you held your breath for just a moment. He's going to see that. And so he was really good. He'd put him on the box afterwards, but he'd tell you what was going to happen because he was so observant of everything.
Yeah. You said in the beginning something crazy, which is... It makes,
I hope so.
some good stuff. You said that obviously the Bureau is trying to figure out what makes psychopaths, what makes serial killers.
Right.
And you mentioned that it could be what happened to them with kids with inconsistent, really bad parenting, basically.
Yeah.
Like, go deeper there. Like if I have a kid and he hurts his sister, and the first time I spank him, and the second time I don't, does that create psychopaths? Like, what's the level of the game here as far as you guys found it?
There are a variety of ways it could happen. One of them is, first of all, if there are no rules, if there really are no rules, if there's no right and wrong, then you can act on impulse, because what do you have to feel guilty about? You feel guilty because you did something wrong. What if there is no wrong? What if it's all in your head? So how do you learn right and wrong? From your parents, from your religion, from your government. That's how you learn right and wrong. So the profilers, they start looking first at what happened. Did the parents teach them there were no rules? And then subsequently, what did the parents believe in? Because your parents could teach you there are no rules, but if you believe in religion, every religion's got a set of rules. Or what if you're in the Soviet Union, or you're in a country that doesn't believe in religion or actively discourages religion as a set of rules to govern behavior? We start finding out, we collective hostage negotiators globally, every now and then we'd get somebody from another country that would take hostages and they would kill indiscriminately. And we couldn't understand why. They were from countries where the governments fell. So if you're from a country where you got your rules from the government and the government fell, what did you learn? There are no rules. So where do you get your rules? And at some point in time, did something happen that caused you to believe that it was all made up and there was no right and wrong? And then there's some other behaviors that might interact to lean you in one direction or another. So
do you think that, like, today in society, we know that religion is declining, like organized religion uptick, maybe not over the last 2 years. It seems like there's some trend reversal, but I haven't seen the data. But we have seen, let's call it over the last 100 years, real decline in organized religion uptick in America.
Right.
Also, we've seen, we're in New York. It appears to me that we have a little bit of we've got a disagreement with rules here, depending on who you are. It's like, is it lawful? Is it not? Right. Kind of depends. Right. So do you think that means that we're creating more psychopaths today?
Yeah. I don't think so. Although the number has fluctuated. Like when I first started looking at the number, they used to say like 1 in every 112, 116. And now they're saying roughly 1 in 35. What? Which then I really enjoyed talking to groups of more than 35.
That's horrifying. Is
Because
that
then
true?
I'll say, look around the room. Look around the room, see if you can spot psychopaths, because there's more than 35 of us here. That means there's at least one.
Whoa.
So are we creating more, or are we just increasing our ability to detect them? So while there may be a decline in organized religion, I'm not sure that correlates with a decline in spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that makes it a different question. And organized religion, bureaucracy-based, then it always gets watered down. You know, I think Bono said something to the effect of Christianity today is what you have when Jesus has left the room. You know, he's very much a believer in Jesus.
Yeah.
He wouldn't describe himself as a Christian. Or, again, Jordan Peterson talking about I think he said his favorite writer or his favorite thinker is Nietzsche, who famously said, God is dead.
Yeah.
And my paraphrase of Jordan's description of that, well, that was just copy. It was good copy to get attention. And then he pointed out that in all of Nietzsche's criticism, he criticized organized religion, but he didn't criticize the Gospels. So then, all right, so now we got a departure. What's spirituality versus organized religion?
Interesting. You know what's kind of fascinating? I know that a lot of people today think that it's weird to talk with somebody that you don't agree with. But
right. Supposed to throw a rock at him, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, beat him to a pulp. But do you think it makes us weird that both you and I, really, when I was talking to those cartel members, or when I'm talking to somebody that I think is totally out of the loony bin, I'm so intrigued.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything more fascinating than getting to sit down with somebody that it's almost hard to understand their worldview. And does that mean that we're actually less empathetic in a way, or less emotional in a way?
Well, I would, according to my definition of empathy, we're more empathetic.
Yeah. So more empathetic.
And then, this is going to sound very self-serving. I think there's a deeper love for humanity to want to understand every human. Like this, do I love humanity? Some people say, I love people, but I don't like individuals. I don't know where all these lines are. Or I love learning systems and origins, which is anthropology. I'm fascinated. How did you get to be how you are? So I think there's a deep appreciation and a deep optimism there, too. I think there's a very deep optimism behind that, which I think everybody has, but we haven't had it covered up as much. Again, Jordan Peterson's contention in an interview recently was that people obey the law mostly out of cowardice. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them if they break the law, which is a harsh way of describing fear. Just because you're fearful, does that necessarily make you a coward? That depends upon your definition of what being a coward is. But so I think that we've had it less buried in us. Because if we start with the 5 original equipment, and then as we've interacted through life, somebody said something to us. Either mom or dad, probably mom, because we were around mom more, that somewhere deep inside us put an optimistic thing in our brain. After we were born, somewhere in the first 5 years of our life. And I think that has stuck. And we've been lucky enough at those 2 lines of code that somebody embedded in us early on was optimistic.
Yeah, fascinating. What about, so you don't think, so psychopaths aren't born, they're created? Is that what you think? Are people born with a psychopathic gene?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I'm there I'm on that hypothesis, yeah.
That's why. So if you have a kid that becomes a psychopath, is it largely your fault as a parent?
Fault versus accountability.
What's the difference?
Yeah, you're going to have to live with it. Yeah, maybe it's a politician's answer. I once heard Chris Christie say, it wasn't my fault that it happened, but I am accountable for the results, which was an interesting distinction. So maybe somebody else did it. And I think that's what some parents really struggle with. Somebody else damaged their kid under their nose and they didn't see it. And then by the time it manifested itself, it was extremely difficult to reverse, if irreversible at all. So, that's a hard thing. Your kid's going to go out in the world. There are going to be people around you that you should trust that betrayed you. Like it's a tough thing to lay it all on the parents. It's a tough thing.
Yeah. Do you think that? Do you think you can reverse psychopathy? Is that the right way to say it? Can you reverse
I think
psychopathy?
there's some forms of damage that can be reversed, possibly. We're getting into new areas all the time with neuroscience, chemical journeys that previously have been completely illegal and are starting to become experimental in the United States.
Meaning like psychedelics?
Yeah. There are probably certain things that can never be reversed. We are never going to get away from the reality that there are going to be some people that we're going to need to lock up and never let out. Now, how many of them are like that? That's a tough one. What's going to happen to them? Andre Norman, friend of mine, doing serious jail time, convicted for attempted homicide 8 times. Has a moment when effectively God comes to him in a jail cell and says enough. Maybe before that, you'd have been convinced that you'd never get Andre out of what he was. Third-ranking prison gang leader in the state he was in. Very, very, very dangerous, very bad guy. Everybody's scared of him for good reason. Now making the world a better place. Before that moment, you'd have said you probably would have said you can never let this dude out. Now he's making a great contribution to planet Earth, so it's a little bit hard to say what's irreversible.
How do you know he's not lying?
My gut. And his actions since, we crossed paths early on, introduced by a very good friend, Joe Polish. And Andre's just doing too much good in the world and just too straightforward. Like, you got a kid who's on drugs, Andre will find him, bring him out.
And he said, what did he say happened?
He was, 2 epiphanies hit him at the same time. And he was, in his description, in his jail cell, plotting 2 murders so that he could rise to number 1. And 2 simultaneously things hit him. He was going to become the king of nowhere. I'm going to be king. And then, what am I the king of? I'm the king of nowhere. And then I've also heard him say that God just said that's enough.
Fascinating. So the only answer is it's not like here's steps 1 through 7 to stop becoming a psychopath. There's no 4-hour work week to psychopath's behavior changing.
Yeah. How do you solve the riddle? I don't know. Keep trying. Don't give up.
I've heard you also say that a lot about tone with your voice, which every time we talk, I always notice with you. You have like really good intonation. And I was reading a study that I thought was fascinating that shows that 38% of communication after studying hundreds of people in the workplace came through tone. Not even the words that we said, but the way that we said them determined our outcome. So if somebody got what they wanted or somebody didn't get what they want, it was often the way they said it, not the thing that they said.
Right. What was the percentage again?
38%.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh,
Does that seem right?
Yeah. Yep. I've seen a 38% number crop up a lot. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that that's true? And what do you know about tone and how to use it in conversations?
Tone is like the spin on a football or a baseball. Like a baseball player wants to throw a strike. For the ball to hit its target, it has to have spin. And so they throw a knuckleball. A baseball player pitches a ball that has no spin. The thing flies all over the place. Nobody knows where the hell it's going. The catcher doesn't know where it's going. Nobody knows. It's going to miss the mark. So tone is very much like putting spin on a ball. It's essential for it to hit its target. And so then when you begin to experiment with it and are fascinated by it, curious about it, and you start picking it up different ways. The great comedians. Chris Rock delivers his monologue in a monotone. Nobody's going to laugh. But he starts adding his tone of voice. And then everything hits the mark. So if you're interested in communicating verbally, you start studying tone. You notice tone. And then if you want your words to be effective, I start realizing a certain tone, it doesn't matter how nice I said what I said or how nice the words were. If my tone was off, it ain't going to land. And so I want to be effective. And so I start to pay attention. And then hostage negotiations and the suicide hotline, they taught us, the downward inflecting, calming tone, the late night FM DJ voice. And then I'm doing a training after I understood how powerful that was. Psychologist in a room, hypnotherapist comes up to me afterwards. He says, that's exactly the same tone of voice hypnotherapists are taught. So I'm like, ooh, there's more to this than meets the eye. And then the neuroscience starts to kick in. And your response to my tone of voice is a neurochemical response, which means it's not a choice. And if I can trigger neurochemicals in your brain, then you can't stop me from triggering them. Now, you can fight them, but I can initiate the process, which then is why curiosity is impossible to resist, because my curious tone is going to dissolve your barriers, and whether you like it or not.
Yeah. Do I get to tell my husband now next time we fight if I don't like his tone that it's not going to land at all? Do you ever say that to Wendy? She's like, listen, your tone, buddy, ma'am.
Oh, I hear about my tone from Wendy every now and then. Wendy occasionally gets the real me. We joke around. We refer occasionally to me as her emotional support porcupine.
Actually, that's my Chris too. Maybe it's a Chris thing. It's a Chris thing. He is literally the best emotional support animal, but he is a porcupine.
Every now and then.
Oh my God, he's going to hate this, but that's true. Okay, so apologies to Wendy, but let's imagine that you're not with your beautiful...
By the way, she told me, she wanted me to tell you, and I tried to get the specifics out of her. You've got some place where you encourage people that are struggling with their businesses to get help and sell off assets or right themselves. And she had a cosmetic perfume endeavor with a celebrity social media influencer that didn't do the work.
Whoa.
Let him down in a big way. And she saw what you had, and she took the issue to some advisors, and now not only are they not going to lose money, but she's going to end up putting her investors in the black. So she wanted to thank you for that.
Yes, I love hearing that. That's so cool. I gotta ping her on that. You know what's interesting is I found, and I would be curious your take. One, we didn't learn this stuff. We didn't learn negotiation, which is why your book was so important. Then we really didn't learn deal structuring and deal making, which is like taking your negotiation tactics and applying the language that is money or finance, aka deal-making terms.
Two separate skills.
Right, putting them together.
Yeah.
And especially for women, we really don't negotiate deals typically as often as our male counterparts.
Right.
Like I've found by and large, women will be the ones that let the business go down or don't want to engage in the really tough conversation that's you fucked this up, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, this partnership is not going to work. And obviously it would be better packaged than that.
Yes.
But instead of doing that, we just kind of let it slide. Mm-hmm. And I see it because we have 3,000 members in our group, and I watch the difference between men and women, and it's a weird female phenomenon that I've seen. So I'm really excited that she did that. She seems like a badass overall, but a lot of women don't do that. Have you found there's big differences between the way women and men negotiate? Is my little qualitative study at all real in the world?
No, it's real. It's in my view, it's due more to nurture than nature. So little boys, you're getting a dust up when you're a kid. You go home, dad tells you, shake it off, walk it off, go back and kick his ass.
Yeah.
Stand up for yourself, fight. Women are generally nurtured by older women to work on the soft skills. Yeah. Think about long-term, think of the relationship. So I think the nurturing for women there is to be more hopeful, to be more soft-skilled, more long-term relationship-oriented. So then getting into a world that appears to be combative, and women as generally to be nurtured not to be combative, they have been nurtured into assertion. Mm-hmm. But if they can blend assertion with the soft skills, then suddenly they're superstars. Yeah. And so then how does it get blended? Mm-hmm. The blending has been picked up most recently in the last decade or two, which I'm delighted to see, because I'm a last century guy. Last century, women were told to be one of the guys, yeah. Yep. Which would extinguish their femininity. Yeah. And in today's world, women are encouraged to retain their femininity mm-hmm. in the business world. Mm-hmm. And it's starting to take hold, where they can be very feminine at work. They can be a Lori Grenier, very feminine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Lori Grenier is still going to kick your ass. I love it on Shark Tank when in a super sweet way, she tells Mr. Wonderful to shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you like her while she's doing it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah, so it's becoming more acceptable to become a badass. Somebody like you has the opportunity, hasn't sacrificed a bit of your femininity and being a badass. On the Fireside app, the Fireside show that I have, Fallon Macbeth, Fallon Fatamy, younger badass female, very, very feminine. So it's becoming openly encouraged instead of openly discouraged. And so women are still catching up. There aren't as many role models, but the role models are starting to emerge. And like when Riyadh, supposedly the Islamic Sharia police and a male-dominated culture, which was them 15 years ago, which, the current leader of MBS says, that ain't taking us into the future. So at this conference, if I'm surrounded out in the hall by women of all ethnicities, because they can't get enough of this. And they're being asked in Riyadh to be in implementation, influence, get it done, lead positions. And so they're looking to get into it, and they're looking to get it done. They don't want to be jerks. They don't want to be kicking chairs across the table as a default mechanism. Now, every now and then you got to kick a chair across the room, but not as your first move.
Have you ever actually kicked a chair across the room?
No.
Thrown one?
Not yet. I'm sure people that work for me have said that it felt like it.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, you're right, I remember the generation of women right before me that were tough. And in a lot of ways, I think they had to be, and so they were more masculine, more like the other men.
Right.
And I thought I had to be like that too. I don't know if Wendy ever went through that, but I cut my hair real short and didn't wear makeup and wore the suit and all the things. And it was kind of ridiculous. And it really makes you less endearing in a way, because you're like, yeah, bro, what's up? And don't call me bro. Right. And so it doesn't feel very real. It's almost like you're lying, but not on purpose.
I think so. I think if you're extinguishing part of you to try to fit in, it's a bad idea. And for women, that is called for less now. There are, you got a large audience, and they're not being ridiculed over it. They're not being told to be. If somebody tells them to be one of the guys, they were like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, exactly. No, they won't. The other thing that I thought was interesting was I read this other statistic that said that There's a study done on a couple big corporations, but across thousands of individuals, that showed that it isn't intelligence as measured by IQ that increases earnings. It's instead that those with higher ranking emotional intelligence earn on average $29,000 more than those with lower emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
That's annually. You think it's true?
1,000%.
Interesting. So if you have higher emotional intelligence, you could make more money.
Yes, and you can cultivate it, and you can learn it, and there's no limit to it. And it's perishable, which means if you don't pay attention to it, it'll go away. But you can rekindle it by paying attention to it.
And by paying attention to it, that just means like asking more questions and really wanting to know the answer?
Well, being more curious, and then also, we call it a cold read. Like, I walk into an airport, and I'm getting ready to check in at the counter, and the woman behind the counter is not meeting my eyes. And I'm next in line. And she's not looking up. Finally, she kind of, okay, looks at me. So a very well-intentioned but really wrong approach would be, how are you today? Well, I've seen that she's not good. And if I go, how are you today? I'm telling her that I'm not, I have my own agenda and I'm not paying attention to her. I walk up instead and I go, tough day? And she'll go, and this has happened. She'll go, no, and smile. To me, that's just practice. Get out of how are you today and a little bit more into, looks like it's a tough day. Look, because you're not going to plan it. Looks like you're having a good day. You look distracted. You look like something's on your mind. That's practice on your emotional intelligence. And I do it on a regular basis because I know it's perishable. Also, I'm very intentioned about my important phone calls. I don't take a call while I'm driving, while I'm walking. I'm sitting and listening. But I might get a call that I got to take in the airport. So I'm going to do some cold reads, emotional intelligence, at the TSA guys, at somebody else in line. Because the phone might ring and it might be somebody that I've been trying to get on the phone for weeks. And I got to take the call. So you can work on your emotional intelligence in little ways. You can work on it with your spouse, your significant other. And say, look, I'm trying to be more attentive. So there's all these opportunities to stay sharp.
And so simple. It doesn't really take much time.
Simple stuff.
Yeah, it seems like most things in life that have outsized return are not that complex, which doesn't mean they're not easy, but they're pretty simple.
Very good point. And simple is often, if it takes you out of your comfort zone, most people over the age of 25 don't want to get out of the comfort zone. But after 25, if you find that you like it, then, out of your comfort zone is where accelerated learning takes place. And if you then understand that, they're like, oh, wow, I can get better faster? I'm in.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more question to close out, but I wanted to tell you, too, I meant to tell you last time, that I had a bunch of our employees take the quiz at Black Swan, which I thought was so useful for us and for them.
Yeah.
And so we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, the types?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And so what is the name of the quiz again?
It's the three negotiator types.
Yeah. And so this really helped me because we hired 2 new executives that were materially different.
Wow, okay.
And I am not always the best with I kind of can get in my lane where I go, I'm doing this, I'm going, and I could not pay attention to cues. And that really helped me. Actually, to think about, awesome. here's how they not only negotiate, but just like communicate through life.
Yes.
So if anybody at all is wondering how to get a team to work better, how to understand your partner, I think that quiz is super, super helpful. So that's just at blackswan.com.
Yeah, blackswanltd.com.
blackswanltd.com. Obviously, Chris Voss on all the socials. I really like the Instagrams that you're doing lately.
Thank you.
They're my little also reminder of the cues and the things I can do daily to get better at negotiation. Like Chris had a big negotiation yesterday, and I saw him. He took a big breath beforehand.
Very good.
Yeah. Kind of like reset his adrenal state, and then jumped in.
Yep.
So I know that's from you. But the last question I wanted to ask you is, do you think that you can be interested in anyone? Like, is there a way to have any human be an interesting conversation and to never be bored when talking to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, that's the way I delightfully sort of try to go through my life. Yeah, you can. It's, if you're interested in where people come from, like I may not like you, but I want to know how you got to how you are. Or I also know if I'm deeply curious in you, there's a really good chance I'm going to be able to gain some influence in you. So it's, to me, it's a combination of being both a missionary and a mercenary.
So do you ever have a moment where you're meeting with someone and you're like, God, I'm so bored right now in this conversation? And how do you get out of that?
I don't get bored. If I find somebody whose core values are vastly different than mine, like if they're way into manipulation, or
what if they just yammer about a bunch of stuff that you don't care about? Like, what if it's like PTA meetings and their dogs and something else that is unimportant to you in this situation? How do you flip your script on that?
Well, for me, if my energy level is there to intervene, like if I'm tired and I'm burned out, I don't know if I'm an omnivore or an outgoing introvert, I don't know what it is. So if they're yammering on away and I just don't have the gas in the tank, I'm not going to fall asleep in front of them, but I'm not going to engage. But if I can rally the energy, then I'm going to be able to get them out of it. I'm going to, whatever they're yammering on about, there's an interest in there that's probably fascinating. So I'm gonna trigger into it, and then also my favorite question these days. Let's say they're yammering on about the PTA. I'll probably say, "What do you love about the PTA?" Now that's probably going to trigger an instantaneous state change in them, and change the conversation. And then I can dig into it deeply, and pretty soon I'm going to find out fascinating stuff about them.
Then it's like straight to daddy issues, deep talk.
Yeah, whatever it might be, ethnic issues, their perception of the world, how the world kicked their ass unfairly. But it's going to change from a boring conversation to an interesting one if I can rally the energy to do it.
I love that. I think that's kind of nice because there's no excuse then to not have a conversation, to go to deeper level with a human. And sometimes I make too many jokes about like, I'm so over small talk, but it's pretty lazy on my part. And if I'm skilled enough, I should be able to go deeper than the small talk.
Yeah, well, exactly. You can. Small talk doesn't do anybody any good, but what's driving a small talk and it's probably fascinating.
Yeah.
And so let's make the change.
Love that. Chris Voss, you're the man.
Thank you very much. I would like to add in a shameless commercial.
Yes, let's do it.
All right, so March 17th and 18th, 2025, we're doing a negotiation mastery summit in Louisville.
Ooh.
And we ended up in Louisville because actually my company's going to put out a bourbon next year.
Get out. I also love Louisville. It is a cool city.
We found ourselves tasting bourbon in Louisville, and we thought
100%.
this got to be a great place to have a conference.
Love this.
So the purpose, why should anybody go to a 2-day conference? Because you make a quantum leap forward when you immerse yourself. Now, your husband or anybody else that's reading our stuff, I'm going to want you to get better incrementally. I'm going to want you to know before negotiation, take a deep breath. You should be constantly working on getting a little bit better each day.
Yep.
But if you're working the skills and you want to, then in 2 days, you want to make 6 months of progress.
Totally.
Then you go to a 2-day immersion. And we're gonna have some cool stuff there.
I'm coming.
It's gonna be enjoyable.
I'm gonna send some of our team too. Can anybody come?
Absolutely.
Okay, I like it.
We'll be in Louisville.
Yep.
There may be some occasional sampling of bourbon involved.
I'm into that too. We got to lessen everybody's guards. Where do they go to learn more about it?
BlackSwanLTD.com.
And it's going to be, it's a pop up there or something.
Yeah.
They'll see it right away.
Live in-person event, Louisville.
Amazing. I love that idea. We're going to be there. You're the man. Chris Voss, thank you so much.
Thank you.
just in your mind. You are not crazy. It is more expensive for you than it is for any other generation. Right now, credit card debt has hit a record $1.28 trillion. 49% of people cannot afford their rent or to buy a house today. Most of us are sitting here trying to figure it out. When they told us learn to code, that hasn't turned out well. Meanwhile, electricians are making like $100 an hour, and we went and got these grad degrees that have, on average, $76,000 in student debt. And oh, by the way, they're non-forgivable, meaning that debt will follow you around for the rest of your life. Not to mention, look at this video. And if you can't see it right now, this is what it is. It's how all the boomers told us that we were lazy little shits that bought too much avocado toast and had lattes. And it turns out they were full of shit, because look at how much more expensive it is to buy a house for us than them. Back when boomers were buying houses, it was 4 years of salary on average. You know what it is today? 12 years. I don't know how much avocado toast you eat, but I don't think that's sufficient. And I was thinking about that today because we're sitting here this week and I'm not a geopolitical expert. I have no idea if we should have gone to war with this country or that country. What I do know is that we said, hey, government, we can't pay rent. We can't buy homes. Remember, 49% of us can't. And government said, best we can do, bomb Iran. What the fuck? It's actually crazy. If you were to go and look, I will pull this up for you because it's out of control. If you were to look, go to Grok on Twitter. That's Twitter's AI. And you were to ask it how much money we have spent in the Middle East on wars, the answer would be $8 trillion. That's 100x the annual federal spending on roads and bridges. So you're right. They, the collective they, pick whichever politician you want to, are using your tax dollars to do things that will never touch you in the US. Like, imagine how affordable groceries would be for the average person if we had spent things on, I don't know, maybe making it easier for us to farm. I saw this beautiful thing where as only Europeans do, really. But in Europe, they bought every household 6 chickens and they eviscerated the egg industry overnight. Like, nobody needed the egg industry overnight because you were allowed to have these chickens and these coops. And it turns out you gave extras, so you gave them to your neighbors. And of course, this wouldn't work in super urban centers, but really? We can drop $120 million on a bomb? But we can't buy Americans some chicken. So I just want you guys to know it is actually really hard out there. And then I saw this other thing today that I want to read to you. So I was like, tell me if this hits you in the gut like it did for me. Employee goes, it looks like we made $1.3 billion this year. Boss goes, that's terrible news. Employee goes, that's a lot of money. Why is that terrible news? Boss goes, because last year we also made $1.3 billion. An employee goes, oh, right, I forgot. It's not enough to make an insane amount of money. We also have to make more than we used to. Boss goes, that's right. And simply paying our executives 7-figure salaries won't cut it. We need more. Employee goes, all right, I guess we could try making our product better to sell more. Boss goes, sounds expensive. Employee goes, how about we create some new products to sell? Boss goes, that's going to take forever. I need an immediate solution I can implement right now. Something that makes me look really good, takes basically zero effort. Employee goes, oh, please no. And boss goes, layoffs. And I just kind of think that that's what's happening in this world. So right now, if you feel like nobody's hiring you, it's probably not your CV's bad. It's that most people hire friends and relatives and people they know and colleagues, and they get jobs based on handshakes and looking each other in the eye. And if you're not actually out there talking to somebody direct, you're probably not going to make it. I was looking at some stories about people. For instance, there's a guy yesterday, MBA from Wharton, nice house in the suburbs. He was a big company employee his whole life, like a big, huge corporation. He was laid off 6 months ago and he kept getting to the final round and he's 54 years old. That is rough. It's rough right now. And I'm not a pessimist. I don't think this is going to be this way forever. But I do think that we need to be honest about what's happening around us. That we have to normalize that if you want to win, you have to be almost a little bit delusional. That you
have to do things most people won't. You have to believe you're the one. You have to go after it relentlessly. You have to focus so intently on the few things you want, as opposed to spray like the system taught you to apply to 1,000 places, to use Indeed everywhere, to go to college and hope that somehow somebody picks you. No, it's so hard, but it's so true. Nobody will ever pick you. No one is coming to save you. No one is coming to pick you. You have to introduce yourself. And if you don't introduce yourself, you're just not going to get ahead. And I was looking at this, today I did this post talking about how it's kind of not fair that we're spending all this money on other people in other countries. And right here, your tax dollars that you work so hard on, which, listen, it's not that I'm like, oh, fuck everybody who's not an American. That's not true. I'm just saying you didn't sign up to give away your life force, aka your time that you trade for a salary, to give it to everybody else when you're not doing so great. When you're doing good, when the average American, when 50% of Americans can afford rent and a house and afford groceries, awesome, let's help a brother out. In the meantime, why do we say take care of yourself? Why do we say you can't pour from an empty cup? Because you can't. If you guys aren't doing okay, then everything else in the world can't be getting more than you can. I think about this often. Like, how many once in a lifetime things do we got to go through? Now we have AI coming, which is something totally different. Now we have, a 50-year mortgage is basically what they've given us as a solution, when we all know that AI is going to disrupt a lot of jobs in the next 5 years. So it's kind of like, all right, 50 years, but I have no idea what's going to happen in the next 5. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I certainly have. I travel all over the country a lot right now. And I've sort of seen it in like grocery stores and airports and people walking down the street and government buildings. Everybody looks a little drained, right? Everybody looks a little worn out. And I think that is a warning sign of how hard it has been in many ways for many people. And I just want you to know, I think there's 3 answers to this only. And the first answer is that you can never quit. That once you figure out what you want out of life, the secret is just keep going until you figure it out, because usually the thing you want is right on the other side of the time that you quit, gave up, stopped too early. And I know this sounds like hustle porn. Like, Cody, nobody can afford houses, just don't quit. I'm sorry, there's not a better answer than that. The first and best answer is prove that you are a person that doesn't quit, because those are the type of people that get hired, that get money from investors, that get more opportunity, that things get attracted to them. That's just it, period, end of story. Like, if you go into an interview and you don't say to them, I am the type of person that is so relentless that if you don't hire me for this job, I'm going to keep bothering you. Like, I am meant to come do this thing. Like, I need you to have an unreasonable amount of belief in yourself. Not that you can achieve anything. You don't even have to go that far, but that you're a dog on a bone. You're that pit bull that grabs and locks on and won't let go. And every single successful person I've ever met has that. They are just a dog on a bone, unapologetic for the fact that they will not quit. They will not let up. And that has to be you. And the second thing that I've realized is you have to lock in this year. You're going to have more distractions than you've ever had in your entire life. And you're going to have to figure out 1 or 2 things you can focus on per day, where at the end of that day, you feel like you made it. Almost every morning I call my president, Mark, and I have a shit ton of activities and he has a shit ton of activities. And I go, hey, okay, here's what I'm working on. But if I get these 2 things done today was a win. How about you? And he goes, yeah, these are my 2. We're like people with really big jobs, but we know every day there are the crucial 2. And we kind of kill anything that isn't that, because the world will try to take your attention. And it can seem rude. People come up to me sometimes, they're like, hey, can I talk to you about this? I'm like, not right now. No, actually, Or they'll say, hey, can I do this? Can I have your phone? And I go, no, not right now. I'm working on something else. It is that relentless. Because maybe in the past, when everything wasn't so crazy, you could just get by being a personality guy. You could be like, that guy's nice. So it just he just nices his way through stuff. That could be enough, but I don't think it's enough anymore. You're going to actually have to kill distractions. You're going to actually have to set boundaries, and not fake. With all due respect, I am also a millennial, not fake millennial boundaries. I don't work or answer my email after 5. Good fucking luck. Good luck. I mean, I love disconnecting. I'm I tell pretty much everybody on my team always, unless we have something going on, I go, I work all weekend. You can ignore me. If I really need something from you, I'll text you. But like, you can ignore me in Slack on the weekends. Like, just ignore me. You can ignore me usually after work, but you should probably check it. And like, listen, I'm going to get raised for this on the internet, but it's just true. You're going to have to lock in, work incredibly hard, set boundaries, but important ones that allow you to focus on the things that work.
You know what's crazy? According to the Federal Reserve, nearly 40% of Americans wouldn't be able to cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing or selling something. So when you worry about why making it feels impossible in the US right now, you're not being dramatic. You're actually being honest. Wages haven't kept pace with costs. Attention's fractured. And the old playbook, work hard, get ahead, feels slower every year. So here's what's changed. Leverage now lives online. And the people building real momentum, they aren't chasing virality. They're building owned audiences. This is why this episode is sponsored by Beehive. Beehive is the all-in-one platform to publish, grow, and monetize your newsletter. It's built for operators, founders, people who already have ideas but are tired of renting their audience from platforms that can throttle reach overnight. With Beehive, you don't just send emails. You build an asset. You get built-in growth tools like referrals and recommendations. You get monetization from day one through their ad network, boosts, or paid subscriptions. You get analytics that actually tell you what's working all in one place. In a moment where stability feels fragile, ownership matters more than ever. If it feels harder to make it, stop trying to win somebody else's game. Build something you can control. Go to beehive.com and use code CODIE30 for 30% off your first 3 months. Because the new American dream isn't a job title. It is an audience. That's BEEHIIV. I think questions are increasingly more important than answers. Now we have the answer machine at our fingertips, right? AI in many ways. But it's like the right way you ask questions over time. And most people have maybe a 3-to-1 talk to listen ratio. My mom always said, God gave you 2 ears so you could listen more than you talk. I never listened to her about that, but that's what she said. But most people actually don't ask enough questions. And I think that is going to be the key today. What should I really work on? What matters? Where is my curiosity driving? Because do you think you're going to be able to win if you're like a kind of curious person? I mean, but maybe this is the last one. Like, if I will take a confident executor with a sprinkle of delusion over almost anybody else. The entire game is almost all confidence. I love that little clip from Marty Supreme where she's like, what if you fail? And he says, I don't even allow that kind of thought to enter my reality.
Let me ask you something. Do you make money at this little table tennis thing?
Not yet.
How do you live?
Well, I live with the confidence if I believe in myself, the money will follow.
And what do you plan to do if this whole dream of yours doesn't work out?
That doesn't even enter my consciousness.
The idea of failing is not a part of my reality. I don't allow it to enter my consciousness. And I think that's kind of necessary. There's this cool thing. If you ever watch race car drivers before they go onto the track, they look crazy. We can show you a clip. If you watch the YouTube, you can see it here.
5th gear, 6th gear, 7th gear, into 8th, flat out through turn 1, flat out through turn 2, bringing the car to the left-hand side, braking hard at the curb on the left through turn 3.
So basically, the race car drivers usually have headphones on. They have their eyes closed, and you kind of see them twitching their shoulders and hands and making weird little hand movements, almost like tiny claws. And just go watch a bunch of them before they race. They all do it. Why? What are they doing? They're actually visualizing the track. So usually in their headphones, they have the RPMs of the car going up and down, the sounds of the actual track, and then their hands are moving the car and thinking about how the car is going to feel while they're hitting those turns and imagining where they're going. They are so confident in their ability to execute because they visualized exactly where they're going to hit it. And I think that's really cool. And in life, we might be able to do the exact same thing. And so even though it's really hard, even though it's not you, you're not crazy, it is harder for you, at least monetarily, than it was for your parents. I want you to know that there are things we can do to push back on it. And the things we can do actually don't just require more hard work. They require a little bit more belief and a little bit more focus and then a little bit more relentlessness on top. But I've been thinking about you guys because I've made my bag, by now. I've made a lot of money, and maybe I could lose it all. Who fucking knows? And you know, I spend a lot of it on our companies, and I invest a ton, and most of my assets are all set up in everything that we're already doing, and all these people you can't even see out here, and all these other companies we invest in. But like, I've kind of made it, and I worry about you who hasn't yet maybe made it, or hasn't maybe made enough of it yet. And so I hope you feel that like you're a really big deal to me. Everything that we do is for you. And I'll push back as often as possible on the big guys who say that it's fine for the many to sacrifice for the few. I mean, I saw a tweet that just about sent me apoplectic because my husband is a former Navy SEAL. We have lost friends in war. And I have seen what it is like to shake a hand and then not be able to shake a hand, hug that guy again when he comes back. You know, we lost one of our very good friends from high school. Charlie Keating was a Navy SEAL who lost his life. And I won't say the other two because they're not as public, but they died actually in service of the country. And so I saw some idiot. There's been 3 deaths thus far from this war. And somebody said, like, I just want you to know, like, your sacrifices are worth it. And I just wanted to be like, who the fuck are you? Did you send your kids? Have you saddled up? You know, is your husband or wife on their way to go do that? Who are you in finance talking about their sacrifice is worth it for you? And so I feel the same way. Like, it's not worth all of human progression when we have so many who are struggling here. And so tell me in the comments what you're struggling with, what we can help you with. Don't let them turn you into a victim. Believe that you're more capable because you probably are than you think. And keep going, even though in many ways the odds are stacked against you. The last thing I'll end with is like, I truly believe, you guys, that if you use this time, these next 2 years, to buckle down and focus and build using the tools at hand, you can still unlock generational wealth for you and your families. It is here. It is possible. We see it happen every day in the boardroom. I saw it happen just the other day. One of our members, Jimmy, had a struggling business. He was barely scraping by. The business made a couple $100,000 a year. We helped him find one unlock in his business. That was $975,000 in additional revenue for him. Now him and his family are cruising. They've got a business that's doing millions of dollars a year. Like, you have the opportunity to do the unlock. We see it every single day. But unfortunately, nobody else is going to do it for you. Nobody is going to come out and reach their hand and introduce themselves. You're going to have to do that. Let me know what you guys think of this podcast, and I'll see you next week.
This episode is super, super important. How to pick big problems. If you aren't solving big problems, you won't make big money. When you find a problem, that's where the money is. That's not a mindset, by the way, it's a skill set. Big, hairy, solvable. This is where most scaling problems and opportunities live. This is the exact moment where most people run, and thus you get to lean in. Important. This is the Big Deal podcast, and I'm Codie Sanchez. Welcome back. Today we're talking to you builders about how to make more money. The truth that we have today is if you aren't solving big problems, you won't make big money. And I wish I had heard this sooner, that if you want to make more, the easiest way is to find the hardest game and to play it. You know, the truth of the matter is in business, you're always going to have problems. If your business doesn't have problems, it's probably dead. So I want to teach you a framework I use that helps me find the right problems that will make you lots of money. And this is why what I'm talking to you about is so critical today. If your business picks the wrong problems to focus on, you will lose all your money and not make any more of it. If your team picks the wrong problems, you're dead. And if you as an employee pick the wrong problems, you'll never make more money. So this episode is super, super important. How to pick big problems. Oftentimes we run away from big problems, right? We want to beat our head against the wall when you come up to them. But I think this story started to reframe it totally for me. So a few months ago, Mark Andreessen was asked why Elon Musk is able to build rockets, electric cars, brain chips, tunnels so effectively. And whether you like his politics or not, the answer was so good. Mark said simply, what Elon does is he shows up every week at each one of his companies. He identifies the biggest problem that the company's having that week. He fixes it, then he finds a new problem, and he does that every week for 52 weeks in a row. It's a relentless problem loop. Simple in theory and brutal in practice. It requires proximity, so a willingness to actually live inside or right next to friction. And most people don't operate that way. Most companies definitely don't. Problems are treated like biohazards. Stay away. Okay, so rule number one, we are going to reframe. I no longer want to hear you say in your business problems. Instead, we're going to say, there's a growth opportunity. Here's the truth of the matter. When you find a problem, that's where the money is. The second you find a problem, you should be like, oh, wait a second. This was a bottleneck in the way of the flow of money funneling to me. It sounds woo-woo, except it's real. We're going to process them, redirect them, and then we're going to actually welcome them. This is different than what the rest of corporate America does because we've become professionals at problem avoidance. But at SpaceX, they do the opposite. They send a 400 square foot skyscraper into the sky, knowing full well it will probably explode spectacularly, publicly. But they want to know exactly what breaks, when, and why, because every failure will help incapacitate dozens of future problems. So Andreessen describes Musk's idea as something like this, like incredible devotion from a leader to fully, deeply understand what the company does and being the lead problem solver in the organization. And that last part really matters, the lead problem solver, because it isn't really glamorous. I mean, if you understand this, you know the uncomfortable truths is that as a founder, you're going to do the thing that no one else wants to touch. That's it. But that's where all the leverage is. What you earn usually reflects what you solve. And that's why like prioritization, which sounds kind of fluffy, is actually super, super important. If you let low-level problems become what you do, you get low-level pay. You have to be able to outsource the low-level problems, otherwise you'll never be able to build rockets. Now, you don't need to like Elon to understand this, I don't think. You don't need to agree with him. You don't need to launch rockets either. In a $3 million HVAC business or a 20-year-old manufacturing brand, one constraint, one fixable pricing model, one key hire, one broken ops process can change the trajectory of the entire company. What you probably do need to do is move toward the problem that's going to move the needle. I want you to think about it like this. On the left-hand side of the graph, up and down, you have your earnings size, how much money you can make. On the right-hand side of the graph, you have the problem size. I want you to realize that they're directly correlated. The bigger the earnings potential, the bigger the problem. The smaller the earnings potential, the smaller the problem, and vice versa. So we are going to actually figure out how to prioritize problems using what I call the problem prioritization matrix. It's a mouthful, but this is what I use. So Brad Jacobs has built multiple billion-dollar companies in logistics and just about everywhere. He wrote a book called How to Make a Few $1 Billion, which I thought was cute. But what I love is he talks about this in a very specific Brad-only way. So Brad says, essentially, think of M&A, so mergers and acquisitions, something we talk a lot about, is having 4 quadrants. This is the same for any business and any problem. They're defined by size and risk. So first, you can see on the graph, if you go to YouTube, you have big,
low risk deals are the ones everybody wants, right? You can make a lot of money, but not a lot of risk. But they don't actually exist. The second is small, low risk deals. They exist, but you can't make much money from them because of their size. Then you have small, hairy deals. That's the worst quadrant. That's like they're not going to make you much money and they have a ton of problems. The reward is super limited. The odds are stacked against you. So why bother? The bingo, what you are looking for in your business, is the big, hairy deal. If you can find a big, hairy deal with solvable problems, that's where the real money is. And Jacobs didn't win by being perfect. He won by getting really good at solving the right problems. So he's like, I'm not surprised when things don't go perfectly. That's kind of the nature of this thing we're doing. That's not a mindset, by the way. It's a skill set. Big, hairy, solvable. This is where most scaling problems and opportunities live. Now, you don't want it to be fatal, not unsolvable. We're not looking for like cancer solving, but you hit growth and suddenly your cash conversion cycle turns sour. Your ops leader is underwater. Your CRM looks like it was built by a bunch of rabid raccoons. You've got customer demand, but no clean way to deliver. Revenue's up, morale's down. Your systems scream at you every time you find 5 new clients. You guys, those aren't problems. That's not failure. That's actually your growth unlock. Every time you find one of those, you should be silently thanking yourself, because Jacobs would argue, and so would I, that this is the exact moment where most people run, and thus you get to lean in. So if you want to win, you have to rearrange your brain to lean into those big, hairy problems and figure out how to cut off the hair and de-risk, he would say. That's the job. Not avoiding the hard problems, but identifying them and selecting the right ones to solve.
By the way, if you're building a business right now and you're stuck or you want to break out to the next level, maybe you're not where you want to be today. Believe me, I've been there many, many times. I want you to know I got you. We help thousands of business owners a year figure out how to scale to the next level. One of my favorite mentors said, every level you have, there's just a higher level and a higher devil. And so if you've been in business for a while and you're doing 6, 7, or 8 figures, there's probably one thing standing in the way of your next level. That's why we host growth and scale workshops 4 times a year throughout the year in Austin, in Miami, in San Diego, and you may be a fit to come to one of them. If it sounds interesting to you to get help on how to scale your business to the next level, you can reach out to my team at the link in the show notes. We believe in you builders, but we also believe that it's a lonely road and you can't do it by yourself. So I like to take every single problem that I have and put it in that quadrant. I need to hire a new administrative assistant to answer email. Well, it's kind of like a small problem with a small reward. Okay, that's fine. I could spend a small amount of time on it. I need to find an entire new exec team because my exec team isn't functioning right now. Well, that's actually a big, hairy problem. But if I figure it out, holy crap. I spent 6 months looking for the president of this company, Contrarian Thinking. I spent $80,000 on the search just for the recruiter to find him. And the reason I was willing to spend all that time and all that money is because I knew when I found him, even if I paid a lot to find him, and then I had to pay him a lot, that one person would unlock my entire business. So I like to do this to myself. I'm like, every time I get a problem, I'm like, self, remember, it's funny, like how people get upset about finding problems in their business. That's what business is. It's constantly finding and solving problems and learning to enjoy the process. If the issue is real but solvable, keep going. I think most business owners waste years trying to avoid these moments, and the best ones move towards them. I have our teams use this matrix all the time. Print this out, put it up on the wall, have them categorize their own problems and only solve the big ones. I constantly am asking my team, why are you in here? Steve Jobs was actually really famous for this. He was famous for holding a meeting. A bunch of people would be in there. And then he would look at somebody, and if they weren't adding value and it didn't seem like they were relevant to the meeting, he would say, what are you doing in this meeting? Which seems kind of rude. But actually, what was he doing? He was freeing them up to leave if it wasn't relevant to them. He was saying, this isn't your problem set. So for instance, here's how I did it this week. I literally this week was working on some funnels that we have for one of our businesses. So most businesses have some sort of funnel that leads to a product. You get your original lead and you move it through the process until they finally buy. Well, a lot of times if you're talking to executives, they name all these different reasons why stuff is going on. But I start with this multi-step process. First, name your potential problems. Okay, so we listed out every single problem that marketing had. Then we picked the biggest one to solve. How? We wrote down how much money we could drive from each one, and we wrote down how much cost we could have from each one, and we wrote down all the potential solutions.
So this is called the RICE formula. So this model helps organizations make better data-driven decisions by scoring based on 4 key factors: reach, impact, confidence, and effort. But I changed mine to revenue. How much money will this problem that I solve make me? Impact. How much cost impact will we have for doing this? Like, how much will it cost me? Confidence. How much confidence do we have or you have in your estimates? Like percentage or decimal reflecting certainty. So like if you're 80% confident, that's 0.8. And then effort. How much total work, personal months, weeks, or hours will this initiative require? So let's use an example. So a RICE score. Let's say here that you have a revenue opportunity of $1 million. You put $1 million up front minus the cost, $500,000. You put that all in parentheses times 0.8. I am 80% confident in both of these numbers, the revenue I can drive plus the cost. Then I divide all of that by 4 because I think it'll take me 4 weeks to do. That gives me a score. Now, every single thing that I'm going to do, I score this way. Why? Because your ability to choose the right problems will make you more money. Now, some companies lay this out with reach as opposed to revenue, but I really care about cash flow, as you guys know. Here's the truth. If you don't know what to do next, it helps to have a buddy to figure out what to do next. And oftentimes I think that buddy can be an equation. You can have a process, and process limits anxiety. Follow the process and you know that you're going to hit this right step at some point if you don't get up. In business, one of the loneliest things you can be, I think, is an owner of a business. A lot of people think that it's hard to be an employee. Having been both, I would say an employee is a lot easier. And sometimes you make more money because you're not spending in order to eventually one day have the potential ability to make money. We know that it's hard to be an owner, but it gets a lot less hard if you have a process and you have a principled way to do just about everything you do. That's why I use the RICE score. If I go, okay, Cody, when a problem comes into my head, I'm not stressed about it because I know a problem is hiding opportunity. I almost visually think about a problem like a curtain, where if I understand the problem, I pull back the curtain and behind that curtain is money. Now I just need to figure out how much money is hiding behind the curtain. So I use the RICE score so that I can make that curtain transparent. I'm like, all right, there's this amount of revenue, the cost, here's my certainty, my fix. I think we should go after this problem. This will also really help you if you have other team members or employees on your team. Why? Because everybody wants a to-do list like this. They want 452 things that they can do to check things off their list to feel good. But what they actually need to do is solve one problem. And if you get that one thing out of your way, you probably have a different business in front of you entirely. All right, let me know if you liked this episode this week, you guys. And if you're struggling with your one thing in business, we are here to help you. This is my entire life mission, and it's that you never stand alone in your business and you get to follow proven data and systems in order for you to grow. So if you want to talk to our team about coming to one of our scaling and growth workshops, if you want to talk about different resources and communities we have for builders, then you can hit the link in the description. We are here to help you as Owner Nation. All right, see you next week.
Hey, I have something special for you for being such a loyal listener, because you're here with me all the time. I get asked by a bunch of you, how do I tell if I should buy a business or not? Should you buy a business or not? What price should you buy a business at? How do you structure your deal? I got you, fam. So I'm going to gift you our deal calculator. Every time I look at a deal, I grab the numbers, plug it in here, and see how much money I could make or lose if I did a good or bad deal. So this is my gift to you. And if you're serious about buying a business, we want to help you. You can talk to my team about if you're a fit for our business buying community or curriculum. No matter what, here's your free gift. And if you need a hand to hold, I got you too. Hey crew, this is so cool. The podcast is growing like crazy, and it's only actually because of one thing, you. I don't know if you know this, but the only way the Big Deal Pod grows is when you share it with somebody else. We don't do ads, we don't do pay for play, we don't go on other people's podcasts and talk about it. So if you think there was something helpful here, if we made you money, we made you think about your business or life differently, the most beautiful thing you can do for me is share it. And the most beautiful thing you can do for someone that you care about is to share it with them, help them grow alongside you. So please share the pod. That's how we grow. And also tag me on anything you share. I love resharing other builders across Instagram, Twitter, and all other platforms. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You're super important to me.